The acrid stench of ozone, cauterized biological matter, and fused alloys clung to the atmosphere, a chemical residue of the Mark 7 plasma discharge that had leveled the forward command post. Marco Vance, his grave-stabilized combat boots whispering against the floor, picked his way through the resultant wreckage, where spent uranium-tipped shell casings mingled with fragmented isodense ceramic armor from destroyed mechs. The crushing sound echoed in the preternatural, heavy silence that had settled after the catastrophic kinetic exchange. "Hell of a mess here," he muttered into the suit's local comms, unnecessarily adjusting the strap of his Mark 7 plasma rifle. The weapon's liquid nitrogen-cooled power cell maintained a reassuring low hum against his shoulder, one of the last reliable constants in this landscape of thermonuclear annihilation. His HUD displayed only static and cascading checksum errors. The Drachnid counterfrequency burst had crippled their entire high-band communication array. The battle had been brutal. Drachnid biomass hordes had struck with terrifying speed, overwhelming their coordinated defenses through sheer, horrific density. Marco was the only survivor. The 17th Marine Combat Division was reduced to one man. His multispectrum environmental sensors registered localized biomovement ahead. Marco instantly dropped into a combat crouch. His myome-augmented muscles coiled and tensed as he brought the rifle to bear. Through the still-settling dust and plumes of residual combustion, he caught a glimpse of something that arrested his tactical thought process. A slender female figure lay half-buried under a slab of collapsed ferrocrete, her silvery, crystalline hair spread out like spun, metallic thread against the scorched earth. Her skin possessed an unsettling, otherworldly lavender-gray hue, marking her as a Lythriel warrior, an entity from the stars and one of humanity's only viable allies against the xenocidal Drachnid Collective. Marco approached with deliberate caution. The hard-coded principles of tactical survival fought a losing battle against his innate, reckless human instinct for aid. The Lythriel warrior was encased in a suit that somehow fused the elegance of ancient, ritualized garb with modern, layered kinetic armor, now horribly ripped and stained by phosphorescent, oxygen-reactive Lythriel blood. Her eyelids flickered, then snapped open, revealing irises the complex, turbulent color of a deep gas giant storm. "Don't move," he stated, the voice synthesizer of his suit low, kneeling beside her. "Sergeant Marco Vance. Earth Marine Corps." "Vanyar. Vanyar Arthan," she articulated, her voice a fragile, melodic sound despite the searing internal pain. "First Strike Force. Spinal trauma. I cannot feel my lower limbs." Marco's triage medical scanner confirmed the devastating prognosis, complete severance of the T8 neural cluster. He was deep in a hot zone with enemy vectors potentially recohering. She was, by all military definitions, a non-viable casualty. Retreat protocol was absolute. Immobile wounded are sacrificed. "Leave me," she said, her awareness piercing his own troubled mind. "Others might live. Save your own life." Marco glanced at her face, then at the blinking red signatures on his tactical display converging from the northern flank. The sensible play was immediate exfiltration. The logical imperative was abandonment. But a fierce, illogical conviction, a uniquely human defiance of cold entropy, roared to life in his chest. "Like hell," he growled, immediately engaging his suit's external lift actuators to free her from the rubble. "I survived this to save a life, not leave one." A fleeting, ethereal smile touched her lips. "Stubborn human. You haven't seen stubborn yet, sweetheart." He lifted her with extreme care, observing that her minimalist, aesthetically driven combat suit was paradoxically constructed of hypertensile memory polymers that provided structural stabilization. "This is going to sting." "I've endured worse," she affirmed, only to gasp sharply as he adjusted his hold. "Though perhaps not recently." Marco managed a grim grin despite the incoming threat. "Hold tight. We're initiating an extremely unauthorized withdrawal." Marco moved with the unnatural, silent speed of his servo-assisted suit through the shattered landscape. His myome-enhanced frame registered Vanyar's mass as inconsequential. The Lythriel warrior had gone quiet, yet her steady, shallow breathing against his neck assured him of her consciousness, and her keen alien sensoria monitored their pulverized surroundings. "Your cardiac rhythm is remarkably stable for a soldier hauling functionally inert mass across a contested zone," she murmured, her alien breath a slight, cool tickle on his ear. "Marine training, sweetheart. I've got to admit, you're the most compelling cargo my deployment has ever involved." Her soft, resonant chuckle triggered an unexpected bioelectric shiver down his spine. Flirting while evading kinetic mortality. How delightfully human. "What can I say? I'm highly optimized for resource management." Marco secured their position behind a demolished Type II heavy assault mech, quickly cross-referencing his display. 3 bogies, 2 o'clock. Drachnid doctrine. "They utilize trilateral hunting geometries," Vanyar whispered, her delicate fingers unconsciously applying slight pressure to his shoulder plating. "The initial visual contact is always an unarmored decoy. Watch for the flankers." Marco processed the critical data instantly, appreciating her raw tactical knowledge and the involuntary, stabilizing pressure of her body against his as she strained to see. "Focus. Maintain tactical discipline," he chastised his racing thoughts. "Any other operational features built into that stylish combat suit of yours?" "Several." Her voice acquired a low, playful timbre despite the ambient destruction. "Though I am curious what criteria led to your specific interest in my defensive aesthetic." "Purely professional interest, of course," he grinned, sidestepping a massive, smoking fusion crater. "The hydrodynamic efficiency and reduced thermal signature of your armor design are quite striking." "Of course," she purred, the sound resonating through his suit. "Just as I am admiring your suit's offensive payload capabilities, purely from an engineering standpoint." Their dangerously engaging banter was abruptly ruptured by the distinctive, high-frequency whine of Drachnid pulse cannons charging. Marco executed a zero-latency combat dive behind a fallen, load-bearing pillar, twisting his torso to utilize his thickest armor to shield Vanyar as superheated crimson plasma bolts vaporized the atmosphere where they had just stood. "Well, this is cozy," Vanyar commented dryly, her face inches from his visor. "Comfortable?" Marco asked, his mind already running a recursive algorithm for viable exfiltration vectors. "Quite." Her metallic hair brushed his cheek as she pivoted slightly to assess their cover, "though I do prefer my intimate proximity encounters to lack concurrent hypothermal projectile threats." Duly noted for the post-conflict after-action report. Marco risked a rapid visual scan over the shattered parapet. "I count 5 hostiles. Your analysis, please." Vanyar's Stormcloud eyes were now alight with raw, honed warrior intelligence. Their biotech-chitinous armor possesses a critical, structural fault line at the cervical-scapular junction. One precise, high-yield strike and, boom, Marco finished, his expression grimly approving. "I appreciate your engineering perspective." He instantly adjusted his stance, maintaining Vanyar's structural security while smoothly bringing his Mark 7 to optimal firing alignment. The first plasma blast hit the Drachnid warrior perfectly. The armor's integrated life support system underwent catastrophic decompression and thermal runaway. The resultant chain reaction explosion vaporized the enemy and disabled 2 adjacent companions. "Impressive kinetic projection," Vanyar stated, her admiration an almost palpable wave of energy. "Impressive target vectoring data," Marco countered, already transitioning to the next covered position. "We demonstrate positive synergy." They sustained their lethal, coordinated choreography across the pulverized terrain, Marco's sheer physical strength and CQC mastery seamlessly integrated with Vanyar's superior battlefield intelligence. Despite her physical trauma, her suprasensory perceptions were invaluable, flagging microsignatures his own sensors overlooked. As they cleared the adjacent sector, Vanyar's breathing hitched. "Marco, hold position. Do you detect that specific chemical signature?" He halted, his own augmented olfactory sensors isolating the strange, metallic organic scent she had noticed. "High-density thermal fuel cells. Multiple containment breaches." "There," she directed, pointing toward a massive, partially collapsed structure, its alloy twisted like wet foil. That is a downed Alliance heavy transport. If the cargo manifest survived, it may contain a biometric medical pod. Marco immediately processed the implication. High risk, but high reward. I trust your assessment. The statement, devoid of irony or humor, resonated with more profound weight than their earlier flirtation. Marco quickly scanned her face, seeing the controlled pain beneath her warrior's composure. We check it out. But first. He slightly shifted his grip, carefully drawing her closer. Optimal structural security. Significantly improved, her fingers lightly traced a pattern across his breastplate, though I have compiled several superior operational geometries for this proximity. We will archive that data until the immediate threat level is downgraded, Marco chuckled, moving toward the looming, broken mass of the transport. The wreckage stood as a silent, terrifying monument to the conflict's intensity. Marco's tactical display began to flicker with high-priority proximity warnings. Incoming vectors? Vanyar asked, instantly picking up his tension through the subtle shift in his suit's posture. Affirmative. The party is about to begin. It is fortunate you brought specialized entertainment. The transport's internal emergency lighting, a sickly, ethereal blue, refracted across Vanyar's silvery, metallic hair as Marco guided them deeper into the ruined hull. His HUD showed an increasing convergence of multiple high-signature hostile contacts, yet the target, the medical bay locator beacon, pulsed with insistent clarity. If we initiate this sequence, Vanyar whispered against the sensitive common near his neck, the resultant plasma power surge will register as a thermal spectrum supernova to every Drachnid sensor within 10 kilometers. Then we ensure the resulting action is definitive. Marco's fingers instinctively pressed a brief, reassuring sequence onto the durable polymer of her side where he held her. Besides, I've always been interested in large-scale social events. The medical bay hatch, its reinforced alloy partially fused by thermal fire, required Marco to execute a difficult structural shift, temporarily placing Vanyar down while he manually forced the buckled door aside. The interior site caused a shallow, involuntary intake of breath. A perfectly preserved, fully operational Lythriel bioregenerative heel pod stood miraculously intact amidst the structural ruin. By the first light, Vanyar gasped. That is not standard Alliance technology. That is a sacred healing chamber, built for deep genetic repair. Marco raised a questioning eyebrow. Sacred as in optimized clinical efficacy, or sacred as in accidental summons of non-corporeal entities? Both protocols are possible. Her storm-gray eyes locked onto his. The core function relies on establishing a temporary, deep biological bond between the injured patient and the operator. It is profoundly intimate. Define the parameters of intimacy, Marco pressed, already moving toward the life-saving device. Among the Lythriel, participation in a shared healing cycle is deemed a commitment more binding than any marital contract. A faint, luminescent purple blush briefly highlighted her lavender cheeks. The resultant genetic and neural resonance is unpredictable across species lines. Marco paused, the gravity of her words finally settling. Are you providing a risk assessment or an unexpected proposal? Her soft laugh was a sudden, beautiful melody in the harsh environment. Perhaps an amalgamation of both. Understand, the technology is rarely shared with other species for one reason: the connection it establishes is absolute. It is permanent. Outside, the scraping sounds of Drachnid chitin and heavy footfalls grew alarmingly close outside the hull. Marco's display confirmed a timeline of less than 3 minutes to intercept. Will it fully repair the neural damage? He demanded, cutting straight to the core metric. Yes. The side effects are secondary. He immediately initiated the pod's activation sequence. I will not abort a life-saving action based on a mystical alien prenuptial agreement. Vanyar's intense expression softened, yielding to a deeper emotion. You defy all established behavioral models, human. Most would withdraw. Most were not subjected to your continuously distracting combat commentary. The pod began to emit a deep, crystalline hum as Marco gently deposited her onto the bioregenerative field. Besides, I possess an unfortunate predilection for highly capable entities in aesthetically advanced combat gear. Charmer! She reached out, gripping his hand with surprising strength before he could withdraw. You must comprehend the biophysical cost. The chamber is not a static repair tool. It is an evolutionary catalyst. Our base physiologies will undergo symbiotic alignment, meaning I develop a permanent lavender skin pigment. Marco, this is a serious biological phenomenon. So is immediate Drachnid immolation. He squeezed her hand, his resolve absolute. You are the critical variable. The risk is accepted. The chamber's core crystalline surface began to fluoresce with an intense, rapidly growing internal light as Marco stepped inside, adopting the prescribed operator alignment dictated by Vanyar. Their bodies settled into the pre-calibrated receptacles, faces a mere few inches apart. Final override opportunity, she whispered, the proximity increasing the sense of shared fate. Negative. Absolutely not, beautiful. He offered one last, defiant grin. Though I do require a clarification of the current relationship status, am I now your interspecies bondmate? Before she could articulate a response, the chamber achieved full power, enveloping them in a searing, brilliant white light. The sensory input was unprecedented, overwhelming, and absolute. A torrent of liquid biofire flowed through his vascular system, a thermal rush that was simultaneously agonizing and euphoric. He experienced Vanyar's pure Lythriel essence, a complex, multispectral psychic signature, merging with his own baseline neural pathways, their genetic helices interweaving in a silent, subatomic ritual that predated the rise of the Lythriel homeworld. Through this sudden, profound connection, he registered her astonishment at his radical compliance, her deep-seated admiration for his inherent, desperate courage, and a primal, evolutionary recognition of his worth. She, in turn, experienced the full force of his fierce, non-negotiable human protectiveness, the unsubtle biological attraction to her honed warrior spirit, and his absolute, simple commitment to their joint survival. The catalytic fusion process consumed minutes that spanned subjective eons. As the residual white light finally dissipated, Marco found himself staring into Vanyar's eyes, irises of deep, turbulent storm gray now subtly flecked with mutable, vibrant earth brown. My limbs are fully functional, she whispered, a deep, resonant wonder echoing in his mind. And I perceive you. Every complex thought. Every unfiltered emotion. Yeah, that constitutes a significant change, Marco agreed, helping her ascend from the chamber, noting the instinctive, absolute synchronization of their motor functions. A positive operational shift. A sudden, heavy-caliber explosion violently rocked the transport hull, an immediate and brutal reminder of their unchanged tactical reality. Marco's HUD displayed Drachnid breaching signatures on the outer hull. Terrifyingly, he could also psychically sense the cold, chitinous intention of the enemy through Vanyar's amplified awareness. Initiate extraction, he asked, drawing his rifle. Vanyar executed a brief, controlled series of stretches, testing the absolute tensile strength of her restored musculature, and then fixed him with a predatory, deeply satisfied smile that sent powerful ripples of shared anticipation through their newly formed bond. Initiate joint defense. She retrieved her specialized Lythriel weapons. Marco felt her entire combat muscle memory, the precise arc, weight, and cadence of the Lythriel energy blades, download instantly into his own mind. That is highly convenient, he grinned, feeling her reciprocal wave of wry amusement. Further unexpected side effects of the hybrid bond. Numerous, she confirmed, instantly moving to his side, their bodies locking into a flawless, synergistic combat geometry. Though perhaps a full debriefing should be scheduled post-elimination of these immediate interruptions. Deal accepted. Marco charged his plasma rifle as the first Drachnid vanguard ripped through the medical bay doors. But I expect a detailed operational breakdown of this interspecies marital contract later. Of course, my profoundly unexpected bondmate, Vanyar's blade hummed to life. assuming the human element can maintain the required tempo with his Lythriel wife. The medical bay immediately ruptured into hyperkinetic chaos as the Drachnid poured through the breach. Marco and Vanyar moved as a single, perfectly integrated unit, their newly achieved neural genetic bond transforming them into a devastating lethal combat symphony. His plasma projection perfectly augmented her Lythriel energy blades, their motion synchronized with superhuman, zero-latency precision. Left flank, thermal signature 3.5 meters, Vanyar's thought arrived, not as a command, but as shared cognition, and Marco was already firing before the mental warning concluded. 3 Drachnids imploded, her blade instantaneously claimed 2 more. They severely miscalculated their required troop strength, Marco quipped, feeling Vanyar's wave of amused acknowledgement through their connection. Evidently, they underestimated the exponential combat coefficient resulting from human Lythriel synergistic cooperation. Her blade spun in a luminous, deadly arc that perfectly matched the rhythm of his own directed fire, though I concur, this specific partnership was entirely unpredictable. Their shared consciousness amplified and optimized every aspect of their combined combat prowess. Marco could predict Vanyar's complex motor intents before she initiated them. She intuitively charted the ballistic trajectory of his shots before the plasma left the barrel. They flowed around one another like superconductive liquid, each rapid motion devastatingly precise and efficient. Threat Vector 6, behind both. The shared psychic warning flashed simultaneously, followed by a shared, brief burst of mental laughter as they executed a perfectly harmonic 180-degree pivot, instantly eliminating the flanking threats. The remaining Drachnids paused, their collective bioneural network clearly registering the unsettling, unnatural coordination of their two-bodied opponent. That flicker of biocomputational uncertainty proved terminal as Marco and Vanyar launched a final, synchronized assault that resulted in absolute target liquidation. Well, Marco breathed, lowering the now smoking barrel of his rifle as the last chitinous form collapsed. That was highly stimulating. Exhilarating, Vanyar finalized, her alien eyes bright with the residual bioelectric charge of battle fever. Through the bond, he felt her Lythriel bloodsong, a powerful, deep resonance of victory, her body humming with an excess of unspent kinetic energy that perfectly mirrored his own post-combat adrenaline surge. The intense proximity of the conflict, magnified by their newly merged neural pathways, had created an overwhelming, intoxicating cocktail of adrenochrome and shared transcendent emotion. Marco felt Vanyar's raw, escalating desire crash over his psyche like a massive tidal wave, instantly amplified by his own sudden, visceral passion. "We should disengage and secure the perimeter," he started, his conscious thought process already secondary. But Vanyar was already moving toward him, her silvery hair floating around her like a celestial coronal discharge. "Affirmative," she agreed, the bond transmitting the entire unspoken, biological agenda. "The sacred healing chamber did not merely merge our cognitive functions, Marco. Our base physiologies are now optimally compatible. Every single sensation is now exponentially shared," he finished, pulling her against his chest. "I can feel your every neural pleasure trigger. Then initiate the sequence." Her lips found his, and their localized reality instantly fractured into a cascading, shared sensation that the bond amplified to a breaking point. Each microtouch immediately created a reverberating feedback loop of escalating pleasure that threatened to overwrite their very consciousness. Time became a meaningless concept as they succumbed to the biophysical imperative, their merged consciousness making the experience simultaneously more intense, more profound, and infinitely dimensional. Every caress, every kiss, every intimate gesture was experienced twice over, the pleasure building and reflecting between them like light between two hyper-polished mirrors. Hours later, they lay interlaced, their bodies intertwined in a secured, rubble-free corner of the medical bay, their discarded tactical gear scattered haphazardly around them. Marco traced delicate, complex patterns onto Vanyar's smooth, lavender-gray skin, marveling at how the simple physical contact immediately transmitted residual pleasure echoes through their bond. That was a sensory event of the highest order, he struggled to articulate. "Unprecedented," Vanyar suggested, her mental touch saturated with satisfied, feline amusement. Even among my Lythriel ancestors, the chamber's residual bioeffects are typically far more subtle and contained. Must be my irresistible human genetic anomaly. She laughed, the sound a resonant, internal music that played in both his inner ears and mind. More likely it is your radical, deeply disruptive human determination. You didn't merely submit to the bond, you embraced the synergistic fusion entirely. Zero emotional latency. Zero biochemical reservations. Why would I hesitate? He pulled her closer, their aligned biometrics causing their bodies to fit with impossible precision. You are the single most compelling and dangerous organism I have encountered, human or otherwise. Through their neural connection, he felt her intense wave of shared contentment at his words, but also a nascent flicker of deep-seated concern. Marco, there is a critical, unexpected development concerning Lythriel reproductive biology in this unique interspecies bond we have forged. Let me guess, more fundamental disruptions to my known reality. You could describe it thus. She propped herself up on one elbow, her crystalline hair cascading over the smooth curve of her shoulder. When we achieved complete genetic and neural union, the chamber's catalytic effects, combined with our unforeseen physiological compatibility. She paused, seeking the appropriate cross-species nomenclature. Among my people, such a connection of this depth invariably leads to a biological imperative for. A loud, distant kinetic explosion violently tore through the silence, cutting off her critical revelation. Their mutual tactical awareness, now terrifyingly amplified by the bond, immediately isolated and identified multiple new, high-signature hostile vectors converging rapidly. Hold that thought for the after-action report, Marco suggested, already scrambling for his rifle and armor. Acknowledged, she affirmed, moving with the fluid, impossible grace of a perfectly restored Lythriel warrior to retrieve her twin energy blades. Though I strongly suggest you mentally prepare for potentially disruptive data regarding accelerated Lythriel reproduction cycles. Marco paused, his hand hovering over the actuation sequence of his Mark 7 plasma rifle. Wait, what exactly? Vanyar fixed him with a deeply mysterious, wry smile that transmitted an identical wave of amusement directly into his frontal lobe. Survival is the priority, my unexpected bondmate. Then we can proceed to analyze the operational parameters of human-Lythriel genetic interaction under these specific circumstances. Through the deep channels of their shared consciousness, Marco felt the precise, indisputable moment Vanyar's body confirmed the profound truth the bond had been subtly whispering. Her hand rested instinctively upon her flat abdomen as they crouched behind their makeshift cover, Drachnid pulsefire screaming overhead. So, Marco said, calmly sighting and executing a perfect, terminal plasma shot that dropped an advancing Drachnid scout, I am currently receiving an informational package that confirms my impending fatherhood. Vanyar's blade deflected an energy bolt back at its sender. You appear remarkably unsurprised. After the biofusion, the interspecies combat, and the intimate post-protocol debriefing, discovering I'm having a half-human, half-Lythriel battle hybrid with my alien warrior wife feels logically consistent. He grinned, feeling her amused shock ripple through their connection. Though the gestation velocity is statistically impressive. The healing chamber acted as a reproductive accelerator. Lythriel gestation is normally rapid, but with our profoundly enhanced symbiotic bond, she paused, vaporizing 2 more enemies with a single, sweeping cut. We are now operating in biologically uncharted, high-velocity territory. Marco's HUD highlighted the targeted exfiltration vector, Alliance-reinforced tactical bunker, 3 kilometers due north. Then let us secure the position before this nascent co-pilot decides to implement unscheduled complications. Their shared cognitive matrix rendered explicit verbal planning obsolete. They moved with the devastating efficiency of a single, highly optimized kinetic entity, their movements bellied by the short duration of their partnership. Every stride, every shot, every calculated blade strike flowed naturally from their merged tactical awareness. You know, Marco commented, systematically clearing a section of the ruined corridor, Most couples select a low-gravity resort for their post-bond celebratory excursion, rather than a high-attrition zone with imminent enemy contact. Disappointed? Vanyar teased, her mental touch warm with profound affection. Are you kidding? This is optimal performance art. He meant it deeply, and she felt the pure, unadulterated sincerity transmitted across their bond. Though a clarification is still required. Will the resultant organism display my baseline pigmentation or yours? A sudden, sharp plasma burst ruptured the hull plating, forcing them into a brutal, immediate defensive maneuver. Through their link, Marco felt Vanyar's overwhelming, maternal bioalarm, directed not at herself, but at the fragile, developing life within her. Hey, he communicated instantly, both aloud and psychically. We are achieving exfiltration. All three of us, no compromise. Her psychic response flooded his mind, a wave of absolute, overwhelming love and unwavering trust that stabilized his immediate physiological response. Following it came a clear, internally projected image, a visually stunning child with his earth-brown hair and her storm-gray eyes, the skin a gentle, harmonious blend of Lythriel lavender and human tones. That is the predicted outcome? He queried, deeply moved by the sudden, profound vision of their shared future. That is the biological certainty. She pressed closer to him, their anatomies achieving a perfect, symbiotic fit. Lythriel mothers maintain an absolute, preneural connection with their unborn. And through our bond, you are now a participant in that precognition. Marco reached out with his newly acquired, suprasensory perception and immediately inhaled sharply, a sound lost in the ambient battle noise. There, at the periphery of their shared consciousness, was a tiny, nascent spark of pure bioelectric life, formless but already radiating intense, boundless possibility. That is, an unexpected data set, he managed, struggling to quantify the profound spiritual event. Our future, Vanyar concluded, her mental signature saturated with transcendent wonder. A perfect, organic fusion of two advanced species. The first of their kind, achieved without laboratory manipulation. A massive, highly concussive explosion rocked their immediate position, forcibly re-establishing contact with their hostile tactical reality. Marco's HUD showed enemy forces executing a precise, coordinated convergence from 4 primary vectors. Immediate exfiltration is required, he stated, rapidly charting the necessary vectors. Are you prepared for high-velocity, offensive-centric parenting? Vanyar's immediate response was to launch herself into the fray, her motor functions now operating with even greater, laser-like precision. Marco locked his movements to hers, their enhanced hybrid abilities singularly focused on one inviolable imperative, the protection of their growing family unit. They systematically fought through successive, layered waves of enemies. Their dual species, shared consciousness transformed them into a single, terrifying organism. Every incoming threat was met with terminal, hyper-efficient force, their combined combat skills forming a lethal, devastating orbital dance that left a wide, continuous trail of destruction in their wake. The fortified bunker is within range, Marco announced, neutralizing a threat at 200 meters, but the last blast compromised my long-range secure comms. We are entering blind. Through their neural link, he felt Vanyar's unwavering, fierce confidence. We are not blind. We carry the objective within us. Speaking of the objective, Marco paused his firing cycle, registering a subtle, bioenergetic shift within the deep structure of their connection. Did you just? Yes, Vanyar's mental touch was imbued with awestruck amazement. The child's core abilities are actively initiating. They are exponentially amplifying the shared bandwidth of our bond. Marco felt the change too. Their already formidable neural link was expanding, growing deeper, achieving higher fidelity. Their combined combat awareness instantly tripled, allowing them to detect and preempt threats before they physically materialized in the environment. Our child is engaged in survival programming, Vanyar explained, a thread of absolute wonder running through her voice. Even in this prenatal state, they are actively protecting the parental units. That is a highly impressive performance metric for a pre-birth organism, Marco stated proudly. Definitely taking after both of us. The Alliance tactical bunker loomed ahead, its massive, layered, ferrosteel doors visibly scarred by sustained recent kinetic combat. Through their exponentially enhanced bond, both Marco and Vanyar registered a critical tactical anomaly seconds before their conventional systems could calculate the warning. The standard security protocols are reading as non-functional, Marco muttered, his rifle tracking multiple, anomalous threat vectors. This deviates from standard Alliance procedure. Vanyar's energy blade hummed low with barely contained, controlled energy. The automated defensive turrets are offline. Through the connection, he felt her maternal imperative, a powerful, primal force, sharpening her already lethal combat awareness to an insane degree. The facility is occupied. And the occupants are hostile. Their unborn child's presence within their shared neural field pulsed with an immediate, deep-frequency warning, its rapidly developing hybrid abilities providing an additional, vital layer of tactical data synthesis. The baby's unique, trans-species nature seemed to grant it an inherent, intuitive mastery over both human and Lythriel technology. Our little one appears to possess advanced predictive analysis capabilities, Marco commented with grim pride as they followed their child's psychic guidance through a complex series of overlooked, structural maintenance tunnels. A clear inheritance from their father's strategic programming, Vanyar teased, though her mental touch conveyed deep appreciation for his strategic acuity. They emerged into the main internal corridor just as a major, high-yield explosion violently shook the entire facility. Through their bond, they felt the baby's alarm, followed by a powerful, instinctual surge of protective energy that somehow metabolically strengthened their individual combat capabilities even further. They are executing a controlled structural collapse, Marco instantly realized, his enhanced senses tracking the spread of internal blast damage. A containment strategy. They intend to trap us within. Vanyar's response was characteristic, direct, and swift. She launched herself toward the reinforced command center doors, her blade slicing through the alloy like a precision cutting torch through wet tissue. Marco provided absolute, non-negotiable cover for her advance, his plasma shots finding impossible, kinetic angles to eliminate threat seconds before they could fully materialize. The command center itself immediately devolved into a nightmarish scenario of extreme close-quarters combat. The Drachnid occupiers had secured and fortified the position, systematically turning the Alliance's own defensive hardware against the pair. But they had failed to account for facing two beings who thought, fought, and killed as one, their every action guided by a profound union of ruthless tactical brilliance and fierce parental instinct. The primary control console. Vanyar transmitted, both verbally and psychically. I require 30 seconds for a full decryption and access. You have 60 seconds of non-negotiable temporal security, Marco replied, immediately establishing a dense, layered defensive perimeter that covered all four major approaches. Execute the sequence, beautiful. I maintain tactical suppression. Through their powerful neural connection, he felt her alien fingers flying across the input surface while simultaneously maintaining a high-level, multitasking combat awareness. Their child's presence seemed to act as an exponential biointerface, allowing Vanyar to bypass complex, layered security protocols that should have demanded hours of sustained decryption effort. Accessing core systems, she reported back, as Marco's rifle maintained its deadly, rhythmic sonic signature. The defensive grid architecture is structurally inconsistent. Clarify the inconsistency. Our baby is assisting my cognitive function. The protocol stack is not purely Alliance standard. There is a deep layer Lythriel encryption code integrated within. It is almost as if another blast violently terminated her observation, this one close enough to cause the ceiling to rain heavy debris onto their position. Their child's protective bioinstincts flared instantly, and Marco felt a massive, non-metabolic power surge flow through his already taxed musculature, allowing him to hold off the renewed Drachnid assault with terrifying ease. Sequence completed, Vanyar announced, her voice filled with triumph. Defense systems are activating in T-3, 2, 1. The bunker's internal, heavy-caliber weapon arrays immediately roared to full, devastating life, but they did not adhere to the expected, standardized protocols. Instead, the entire system appeared to operate with an unsettling, almost organic precision, targeting threats with preternatural, calculated accuracy. That is a severe deviation from the operational manual, Marco observed, watching the automated turrets eliminate the enemies with impossible, optimized efficiency. No, Vanyar agreed, her mental touch filled with profound, sudden wonder. Our child, they are actively interfacing with the master system. They are seamlessly merging human and Lythriel technology, mirroring the genetic fusion within their own body. The bunker's command center stabilized, humming with restored, harmonic power as Marco and Vanyar concluded the post-defense security sweep. Through the deep resonance of their bond, they felt their unborn child's profound satisfaction at the technological harmony it had effortlessly imposed between the previously conflicting human and Lythriel systems. Alliance High Command will be initiating massive investigative procedures, Marco stated, scrolling through the automatically generated combat logs, which the child had somehow compiled and categorized. These efficiency ratings are mathematically anomalous. Vanyar's hand rested with fierce, protective certainty over her abdomen as she simultaneously monitored incoming priority communications. The Lythriel matriarchy is already demanding immediate, detailed explanations. Our defensive methodology was not culturally conventional. You mean our pre-birth child unilaterally converting this facility into the galaxy's most sophisticated, functional hybrid weapons platform? Yes, that might necessitate some bureaucratic documentation. Their shared cognitive space rippled with mutual amusement, but a core of underlying concern permeated their bond. The implications of their child's innate, active abilities were truly staggering. A single, developing organism capable of fluently unifying two vastly different, advanced technological paradigms while still in utero. They are dispatching delegates, Vanyar announced, her mental signature suddenly tense. Both sides. High-level, politically powerful officials demanding immediate answers. Marco moved behind her, his large, armor-clad hands settling on the smooth, resilient polymer of her shoulders. Through the bond, he felt her immediate, powerful mental and physical relaxation into his touch. Then we will provide the required data. But the presentation parameters will be defined by us. The Lythriel matriarchy is steeped in strict, ancient protocols concerning unauthorized genetic mixing, she cautioned, though her underlying thoughts radiated a profound, almost defiant pride. But they have never encountered a successful, natural genesis of this nature. Nor has the Alliance encountered this level of combat utility, Marco grinned, feeling their child's conscious approval pulse through their connection. I suggest we are currently engaged in writing new foundational protocols. A Priority 1 emergency alert flashed across both their displays, multiple incoming Alliance and Lythriel diplomatic shuttles. Their child's presence in their shared mind instantly accessed the encrypted telemetry of the approaching vessels, analyzing their political significance with unprecedented, rapid-fire depth. Arrival in T-2 hours, Vanyar calculated precisely, turning to face Marco. Her layered combat suit had subtle, dynamic adjustments to accommodate their rapidly growing child. Sufficient temporal allocation for a necessary re-establishment of intimate relational equilibrium. Their bioneural bond immediately sparked with renewed, shared desire, the potent afterglow of their victory rapidly reigniting their earlier, absolute passion. Marco pulled her close, feeling how perfectly they fit together. Temporal allocation is always available for that, he murmured, but then paused, registering the baby's consciousness gently brushing against their minds. Wait. Is the current physical activity protocol considered secure? Given the child's level of awareness? Vanyar's mental touch was rich with a potent mixture of wry amusement and deep, controlled desire. Lythriel children within the womb possessed the ability to enter a self-initiated dormant phase. Our little one is deliberately creating a zone of privacy for the parental units. A highly considerate tactical decision, Marco observed, leaning in, their merged consciousness amplifying every pending sensation. takes after their mother's strategic brilliance. Their intimate moment was abruptly curtailed by a cascading flood of preliminary communication traffic, priority questions from both commands, each demanding immediate, non-negotiable data. The messages were visibly encoded with a shroud, thinly veiled terror regarding the combat data they had received. "They are operating from a state of fear," Vanyar observed, psychically dissecting the underlying political subtext of the messages. "Our child's emergent abilities represent a fundamental threat to their established, known paradigm of human-alien relations." Marco snorted, a brief, sharp sound of contempt. "They should be operating from a state of awe. Instead, they are terrified of the exponential coefficient that humanity and Lythriel can generate together." Through their bond, they felt their baby stir, its consciousness immediately expanding to interface with the bunker's complex array of systems. Encrypted data streams began flowing across all screens, displaying the extensive, decades-long history of previous attempts at forced human-Lythriel genetic and technological cooperation, every single attempt ending in utter, costly failure. Until this moment, Vanyar whispered, a profound, new understanding dawning in her mind. "We are the first successful synthesis. Because all previous efforts were artificial constraints imposed by a laboratory environment," Marco finished, the realization achieving absolute clarity in their shared mind. "Controlled conditions, pre-scheduled mating cycles, forced integration protocols. But we achieved genesis through pure, spontaneous bionecessity." Vanyar's smile was a radiant burst of energy. Natural, accidental, and utterly unplanned. Driven by a genuine, deep-seated connection rather than a calculated, scientific agenda. Their child's powerful presence hummed with deep, satisfied approval, sending continuous, warm waves of contentment and affirmation throughout their bond. The baby's abilities, astonishingly, seemed to increase in power and scope with every passing hour, yet always maintained a perfect, non-disruptive harmony with both parents' base, natural traits. The strategic question remains, how do we structure the presentation of this data to the bureaucratic hierarchy? Marco pondered, reviewing the increasingly demanding and politically fraught messages. Vanyar's response arrived instantly, accompanied by a predatory, deeply confident smile that sent powerful, controlled shivers of anticipation through their shared connection. "We will not explain it verbally. We will provide a direct, absolute demonstration. We will force them to physically witness the truth of what humanity and Lythriel can achieve when the artificial parameters are discarded and nature is allowed to define its own course." "You are suggesting a full-scale kinetic-based presentation?" Marco queried, his mind immediately calculating the massive tactical and political implications of such a move. "Our child already possesses the innate ability to seamlessly interface with both species' core technology. Consider the strategic possibilities, for planetary defense, for unprecedented technological advancement, for absolute, lasting peace." Her eyes gleamed with a deep, futuristic insight. "This is a truth they cannot rationally disregard. And if they attempt political disregard or operational suppression?" Her mental touch was pure, unyielding steel, sheathed in sophisticated Lythriel charm. "Then we will provide a necessary reminder that I am a Lythriel Royal Strike Force warrior and you are an Earth Marine Sergeant who have already successfully defended this position against a superior hostile force, while actively engaged in late-term prenatal development." Marco affirmed, his pride absolute. "Precisely," she agreed, and drew him close once more. "And as I have previously established, the nascent entity remains in a controlled, dormant phase." The command center's layered holographic displays flickered with immediate, urgent data as the joint human-Lythriel diplomatic and political delegation formally filed into the facility. Their assembled expressions were a complex, politically layered mixture of profound skepticism and barely managed, professional anxiety. Through their deep bond, Marco and Vanyar registered their unborn child's sudden, profound curiosity regarding the complex biometrics of the high-ranking newcomers. Admiral Hayes of the Alliance Navy stood at the forefront, his intricately decorated uniform immaculate despite the tense, unsettling nature of his arrival. Positioned directly beside him, Matriarch Alara of the Lythriel High Command presented an imposing, formidable figure in her specialized, ceremonial battle armor. Sergeant Vance, Hayes initiated, his tone painstakingly controlled. The provided combat logs detail mathematically impossible levels of system integration and efficiency. We require an immediate, full spectrum. A massive, deafening kinetic explosion violently terminated his demand as the bunker's lead perimeter alarms suddenly screamed into full, active status. Through their enhanced neural connection, Marco and Vanyar instantly recognized the nature and signature of the incoming threat. A final, highly desperate Drachnid spearhead assault, Marco instantly quantified. But their child was already several steps ahead of their combined tactical thought process. The bunker's hybrid defense systems activated with preternatural, absolute precision, creating an intricate, devastating web of human and Lythriel technology operating in flawless, synergistic harmony. Impossible, Matriarch Alara breathed, her ancient eyes fixed on the tactical displays, which now pulsed with unified energy signatures. Our core systems are categorically incompatible with standard human technology. The energy resonance frequencies alone should create a catastrophic phase cancellation, Vanyar finished, her hand resting with profound, protective purpose over her abdomen. Perhaps it is time we provided a demonstration of what is achievable when we cease operating within the confines of established scientific expectation. Their unborn child's consciousness expanded, gently yet firmly touching every single system in the fortified bunker. The assembled officials collectively gasped as the holographic displays underwent a complex transformation, showing them the battle from an entirely new, multispectral perspective, a view that flawlessly merged human kinetic tactical analysis with deep-frequency Lythriel spiritual awareness. By the first light, Alara whispered, her voice strained, instantly recognizing the distinctive, ancient pattern of Lythriel battle meditation seamlessly overlaid with Alliance combat algorithms. How are you currently achieving this unprecedented level of command integration? We are merely observers, Marco stated proudly, moving to stand in a line of perfect, protective alignment with Vanyar. Our child is the operator. Through their shared consciousness, they felt their baby's deep satisfaction as it rapidly executed a complex demonstration of its innate abilities. Human plasma turrets began firing in absolute, flawless synchronization with Lythriel energy matrices, creating dense, impenetrable defense patterns that should have been physically impossible to generate. A successful hybrid synthesis, Hayes realized, his veteran tactical mind rapidly processing the massive strategic ramifications. But the previous failed experiments all indicated failure because they were constrained, artificial experiments, Vanyar interjected, her warrior's pride evident and absolute. Our child was conceived and forged in the crucible of battle, born of genuine, non-negotiable connection and choice. This is the only successful avenue for natural selection. The bunker violently shuddered and groaned under the renewed, focused Drachnid assault, but their baby's command integration never flickered. The kinetic pressure of the attack seemed only to catalyze and strengthen its abilities, rapidly pushing the operational boundaries of what both species had previously defined as technologically feasible. Observe the tactical overlay, Marco suggested, as their child initiated what could only be defined as a technological and spiritual symphony. The officials stared with undisguised astonishment as human and Lythriel systems began operating as a single entity, executing defensive strategies their original designers had never conceived of. Plasma weapons suddenly gained the deep-frequency spiritual resonance of Lythriel technology, while energy matrices incorporated the brutal, pragmatic efficiency of human kinetic engineering. The Drachnids, Admiral Hayes noted, studying the displays with mounting bewilderment. Their focused attacks, they are being structurally inverted and reflected back at them, utilizing a principle unknown to us. Our child perceives both technologies at their core, fundamental level, Vanyar explained, her mental touch filled with maternal pride and wonder. It instantaneously registers the harmony where we, in our limited perception, saw only absolute difference. Through their profound bond, they felt their baby's consciousness expand even further, reaching far beyond the physical boundaries of the bunker systems. The holographic displays suddenly showed something that made even the stoic matriarch Ilara gasp. Their child was actively accessing and deciphering the Drachnid Collective's core battle network. It is not merely reflecting their kinetic attacks, Marco realized, understanding flowing through their shared awareness. It is broadcasting a fundamental truth into their system. It is forcing them to mentally perceive. Absolute unity, Vanyar finished, her voice thick with emotion. The terrifying, insurmountable power of two disparate species choosing to operate as a single, sovereign force. And that force is driven by something exponentially stronger than simple hatred or fear. The entire Drachnid assault immediately faltered, then catastrophically collapsed as their own integrated systems began transmitting the undeniable truth. The terrifying existence of a hybridized life form that represented everything the collective had fought for millennia to prevent, yet simultaneously embodied a synergistic evolutionary strength they could not possibly ignore. They are executing a full, unconditional withdrawal, Hayes announced, his professional detachment finally shattering under the pressure of the impossibility he had witnessed. Not just from this sector. The entire planetary system. They are initiating a full strategic retreat. Through their powerful neural connection, Marco and Vanyar felt their child's profound, quiet satisfaction. It had achieved its primary objective. It had demonstrated to their enemies a glimpse of the inevitable future, not mere technological integration, but absolute, organic harmony between radically different species. Therefore, Marco stated, turning to the assembled, stunned officials, his arm resting securely around Vanyar's waist. Do you still retain the political posture that human-Lythriel cooperation is biologically impossible? Matriarch Ilara stepped forward, her ancient, storm-grey eyes now filled with humbling wonder. Your child, it is not merely a hybrid success. It is an evolutionary bridge. A foundational mechanism for interspecies stability that we failed to conceive was possible. And a definitive, powerful warning to all our hostile elements, Admiral Hayes added, his tactical mind already calculating the monumental strategic implications of the event. A non-negotiable demonstration that humanity and Lythriel, operating in synergistic union, possess a combat efficacy far exceeding either species alone. 3 orbital rotations after the unprecedented bunker defense, Marco paced the gleaming, sterile halls of the newly established Human-Lythriel Unity Medical Center. The vast facility, a rapidly deployed, groundbreaking collaboration utilizing the merged protocols their child had pioneered, hummed with harmoniously integrated technologies, a permanent, physical testament to the radical changes the unborn entity had inspired. Through their now absolute, continuously strengthening bond, he felt Vanyar's wave of amused, gentle tolerance for his profound anxiety. My fearless kinetic warrior, her thoughts reached him, sharp and clear, who stood against an entire army without once flinching, is now entirely undone by the singular probability of human-Lythriel fatherhood. Frontline combat is statistically simpler, he transmitted back, quickening his pace toward her private, high-security room. The variables are controllable. At least there, I could employ projectile-based solutions to the systemic problem. Her mental laughter, a low, warm resonance, washed over him as he entered. Vanyar was elegantly reclined upon a specialized bed that integrated both human magnetic suspension medical technology and Lythriel bioregeneration energies. Her silvery, metallic hair fanned out around her head like a celestial nebula, and her lavender-gray skin seemed to possess a delicate, inner luminescence. Your bioluminescence is significantly heightened, he said aloud, moving immediately to her side. Flatterer, she murmured, pulling him down for a kiss that ignited a fierce, beautiful chain of thermal sparks through their shared consciousness. Though I predict this high-level glow will undergo immediate, severe attenuation once the final labor sequence is initiated. Their child's distinct presence within their minds had grown exponentially over the preceding months, its consciousness now an absolute, constant companion that enhanced every aspect of their deep bond. Even now, it was gently interfacing with the medical center's complex operational systems, monitoring the status of its own delivery with unsettling, fascinating precision. The nascent entity appears to be operating on a state of high-level anticipation, Marco observed, registering their baby's eagerness through their connection. A clear inheritance from their mother. Always prepared for the commencement of action. The statement is logically inconsistent, coming from the male parent who charged into active enemy fire to rescue a paralyzed alien warrior. Vanyar's mental touch was thick with profound love and undeniable gratitude. Our child derives their innate courage from an equally distributed genetic and experimental foundation. The medical center's merged technological systems suddenly surged with increased, high-priority activity as their baby's internal monitoring detected the absolute commencement of labor. Doctors and healers from both species moved with perfected, practiced efficiency, their previously conflicting methodological approaches now functioning in unprecedented harmony, courtesy of the protocols their child had psychically helped to define. Do you recall the political rhetoric that deemed this entire scenario impossible? Marco asked, gripping Vanyar's hand as the first major contractions began. Natural human-Lythriel hybrid reproduction, compatible technological infrastructure, the prospect of lasting peace. Their foundational premise was fundamentally flawed. They lacked the necessary imaginative capacity, Vanyar replied, her warrior strength and absolute, formidable presence even during this biophysical stress. And they lacked the human audacity to follow emotional impulse instead of fear-based strategic analysis. Their child's consciousness expanded rapidly, filling the controlled atmosphere of the delivery room with a sense of serene, purposeful inevitability. The merged medical systems responded flawlessly to its subtle, psychic guidance, establishing optimal, perfect conditions for its own entry into the world. Through their bond, both parents felt their baby's singular, unified determination to be born as the living, absolute bridge between their two peoples. The subsequent hours blurred into an intense sensory experience of absolute shared physical and emotional input. Marco felt every surge Vanyar felt, their neural bond transmitting both debilitating pain and sublime, shared triumph as they worked as a single entity to bring their child into existence. The medical personnel watched, humbled by the impossibility, as human and Lythriel birthing methodologies combined seamlessly, their actions guided and coordinated by the very being they were attempting to deliver. Finally, with a loud, powerful cry that seemed to resonate through both the facility's physical structure and the ambient digital space, their son was born. He is statistically perfect, Marco breathed, staring down at the infant whose mere existence embodied the unwritten future of both their advanced species. The baby's smooth, taut skin possessed a subtle lavender tint that visibly shifted in the light, while his nascent hair showed complex, interwoven strands of Marco's brown among Vanyar's distinctive silver. His eyes, when they opened for the first time, were a stunning, impossibly beautiful fusion of turbulent Lythriel storm gray and steady, earth brown. Ethan, Vanyar said softly, enunciating the name they had carefully chosen, a portmanteau of the human word for origin and the Lythriel word for unity. Ethan Vance Arthuran. The first of the new epoch. Through their bond, they felt their son's clear, immediate approval of the chosen designation, immediately followed by his gentle, non-intrusive connection to the medical center's master systems. But unlike his earlier, defensive interfacing, his technological interaction was now serene, curious, and focused solely on harmonious data acquisition. He is already engaged in active adaptation and optimization, Marco noted proudly. Learning to utilize his formidable abilities for healing and creation, rather than the necessities of warfare. Because the war imperative is now obsolete, Vanyar responded, cradling their child with fierce love. Thanks to the absolute truth we successfully demonstrated, both our peoples are finally operating under a common, shared objective. The preceding months had borne this out. Since their unsanctioned stand in the bunker, the Alliance-Lythriel cooperation had definitively transitioned from a fraught military necessity into a genuine, collaborative partnership. The Drachnids, faced with the overwhelming, unprecedented power of this new unity, had unilaterally withdrawn to their original borders, initiating diplomatic communication channels for the first time in centuries. Ambassador Vance, Marco mused, gazing at his son with deep satisfaction. The title possesses the required gravitational weight. Ambassador is an insufficient designation. Think exponentially larger. Vanyar's eyes sparkled with a deep, knowing mischief and pride. He is already interfacing with both species' complex technological infrastructure in ways that defy our current cognitive models. By the time he achieves biological maturity, he will rewrite the absolute foundational physics of what is deemed possible, Marco finished, feeling their child's pure consciousness brush against both their minds with a sense of immense love and profound, directed purpose. Through their shared awareness, they glimpsed powerful, complex future possibilities, epochs where humanity and Lythriel achieved feats of creation and advancement neither species could have conceived of alone. And at the epicenter of this potential lay their son, Ethan Vance, a perfect, living bridge between worlds. I confess, Marco said, settling in beside them on the high-tech bed, when I initially encountered you on that pulverized battlefield, I failed to extrapolate this specific final outcome. Is that a statistical admission of error? Vanyar's mental touch was filled with playful, triumphant teasing. The great human warrior did not genetically program for saving a paralyzed alien princess, forging an absolute neural bond, achieving love, and subsequently fathering the galaxy's first successful, natural trans-species hybrid. Well, when presented with the data in that concise, linear manner, he leaned in to initiate a final kiss, their profound bond singing with shared, overwhelming joy as their son's nascent consciousness gently wrapped around them both, a nuclear family unit, bound by biology, fate, and absolute harmony, united in ways no one, human or Lythriel, had ever dared to dream possible.